Today, we are diving deep into a rebellion born in the heart of a forest. A rebellion led by generals with names that sound like myths, armed with weapons born from sheer ingenuity. This is the incredible story of the forest army they built. So picture this. It's Kenya, October 1952. The British colonial government suddenly declares a state of emergency. Now, that's a huge deal. You don't take a step like that unless something has you seriously worried. So the big question is, why? What on earth could push an empire to the edge like this? Well, the answer was hiding in plain sight, a growing underground movement called the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. You probably know them as the Mau Mau. And they had just launched a series of coordinated attacks. Now, you might be thinking this was just a chaotic uprising, but it wasn't. Deep inside the forests of Mount Kenya and the Aberdares, something highly organized was taking shape. A real guerrilla command, led by the generals of the forest. And at the very center of it all was this man, Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi. He was the movement's strategic mastermind, its spiritual heart. Really, he was the face of the entire rebellion. Within the rebellion, though, he went by his forest name, Matemo. It translates to the cutter. And what a perfect name, right? It just captures that sharp, decisive, and totally uncompromising leadership style he was known for.
But look, Kimathi was not a one-man show, not by long shot. He had a whole council of really skilled commanders backing him up. Guys like Stanley Mathenge, another top general who was a master of tactical command.
And his forest name was just as powerful. Kirema-thahu. It means one who cannot be touched by evil. You see, these weren't just nicknames. They were building a legend. They were symbols of strength, of defiance. By 1953, this was a full-blown guerrilla army. I mean, they were a well-oiled machine. They had oathing ceremonies for loyalty. They were running intelligence networks, planning night raids, managing workshops to build their own weapons. They even had complex supply chains. This was basically a shadow government operating from the forest. Okay, so they're clearly organized. The next question is obvious. How did they actually fight? What did their guerrilla playbook look like when boots were on the ground? This is where it gets really creative. Their arsenal was this fascinating blend of old-school tradition and pure, scrappy ingenuity. Colonial law made it almost impossible for Africans to own firearms, so they just built their own. They called them panya guns, or mouse guns, and they used them right alongside devastatingly effective traditional weapons like pangas and spears, perfect for silent surprise attacks. I mean, just pause for a second and appreciate this. They were using scrap metal, old pipes, inner tubes from bicycles, and door bolts to create functional firearms, all from hidden workshops deep in the forest. It's such a powerful example of innovation being born out of pure necessity. Of course, an army can't fight on an empty stomach, and this is where women played an absolutely critical role. Their work was a super high-risk, clandestine operation. They were spies in towns, they smuggled food and supplies, and they used a clever system of dead drops so the fighters could get what they needed without anyone making direct contact. The whole war effort depended on them. So you've got the leadership, the weapons, and the supply lines. But did it all actually work? Did it come together on the battlefield? Oh yeah, and we can see it perfectly in one of the biggest showdowns of the war, the Battle of River Waruhiu. This table really breaks it down for us. It's 1953. Fighters under another leader, General Chibi-Wamararo, pull off a classic guerrilla move. They ambush colonial security forces. They use their knowledge of the land, that unique mix of weapons we talked about, and they just completely overwhelmed the patrol. In the outcome, it was a massive deal. This wasn't some minor skirmish. It went down as one of their bloodiest, most decisive victories. More than anything, it was proof. It proved their strategy, their entire forest army concept, could actually work. But here's the thing about a victory that big. It doesn't go unanswered. The British military realized that simply fighting these guerrillas in the forest wasn't going to cut it. They had to change the game entirely, and the conflict shifted dramatically into a war of intelligence. And you can see the turning point right here. After that big victory at River Waruhiu, the British get a lucky break. In 1954, they capture a key strategist, General China. This gives them a treasure trove of intelligence. So what do? They pivot. They start pouring resources into informant networks and psychological warfare, turning fighters against each other. The battle was no longer for the forest. It was for information. And with this new intelligence-first strategy, the British had one single primary target. The entire counterinsurgency effort started to zero in on just one man, Field Marshal Dedan Kimathi. The hunt for Dedan Kimathi was on. Now, Kimathi was eventually captured, and the forest war did come to an end. But this brings us to one last really important question. When a rebellion is put down, when its leaders are taken and its army is broken, is the story really over? Or does it just live on in the legacy it leaves behind?